looking at a very new Dave Kellett over there. I can tell you've got your hat on, but I can tell there's a difference. What's going on?
The lack of a mustache, Brad. I am no longer trying to sell you a 1976 AMC Pacer.
Oh my God.
I'm mustache-free, my friend.
I missed the mustache completely. I didn't even notice the mustache was gone.
I don't know if anybody out there has ever grown a beard or mustache or goatee long enough where you get to the point where the hairs start to tickle the inside of your nose and you're like, nope, I'm out.
Yeah,
nope, this is ridiculous.
That's enough. Yeah, you can tell every time you smile or something because those bristles come up and poke you inside your nostril. And it's like, nah, I don't like this anymore.
Nope, this is no longer fun. I'm out. And I gotta tell you, having shaved this skin after a few weeks of it's like baby soft to a terrifying degree. It's
tender.
Like the air feels like I just had a mint candy, and this is just basic air.
Did your kids have a hard time like accepting you when you walked into the room? I remember my dad shaved his mustache, but this was after years of having a mustache. But when he walked into the room, us kids were like, "Who's this guy?"
My little one went, put it back!
Put it back.
Put it back. So, although I've got bigger news than the mustache, Brad. Hold on, Are you ready for this? I'm going to take my hat off.
You're going to take your hat off? Okay.
Well, because it was also time for my second quarantine haircut.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm ready for this.
I decided once again, you know what? It was almost pride, Brad, and pride goeth before the fall. I was like, you know what? I did a shit job last time. This quarantine haircut, I'm going to self-administer a better haircut. Because if you remember, Brad, I have artist hands, right? That was my...
Yes, you do. You've got artist hands. I remember this.
Hands. So I said to myself, damn it, David, you can do better than this. You're going to do a second quarantine haircut. You can do this. Okay, so...
All right, hold on. I'm going to give you a drum roll. Get ready to take that hat off. Hold on.
Take this hat off.
Here's your drum roll.
All right. Ta-da!
Oh, holy shit, it's all gone. Oh my God, you've given yourself a complete, if you've ever seen the movies when the guys check into the army, you've taken it right down to the scalp, all the way around.
I'm like the fresh recruit at Quantico. There's no getting around it. I really shaved my head.
This is like when John Candy gets admitted into Stripes. You've got the John Candy haircut.
You know what's funny? I feel younger because I have no hair. I don't know how to explain it. Like the last time I had a cue ball haircut like this, I feel like I was 11. I was like, hey, Dad, can I go bike and get an ice cream? That kind of thing.
Yeah, the last time you had a haircut like that was the last time that you didn't have a say in the haircut. Well, because once you started having a say, you didn't. You
don't pick a haircut like this as soon as you get any sort of adult say in the matter. Well, also, I think my lack of skill made me not have a say in getting down to this haircut. This was a series of errors where the only way I can describe this was, have you ever bought a live Christmas tree, Brad?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you're like, I gotta trim off the bottom so that it fits in the stop. But then you go to trim off the bottom, and then the lowest branches are too close now, and you can't mount it.
Right.
So then you have to cut off the lowest branches. But then you look at it, and you're like, well, now there's too much stump at the bottom. Now I gotta cut the stump again. And then you overcut the stump again, and then you gotta cut another round of branches. And eventually you end up with like a little Charlie Brown 3-foot Christmas tree from a 6-footer.
Yeah.
That's what I did with this haircut. I was like, I'm just going to try a 1/8 bit, just around the ears. I'm going to try a 1/8 inch. Oh, damn it. Oh, damn it. What have I done?
Now I got to even it out. And you're getting nervous. So now your hands are shaking. Your adrenaline's running and you're not making good decisions.
Brad, you know how we had that whole show about whether we talk to ourselves in images or talk to ourselves in a dialogue,
Yeah.
My dialogue to myself this whole time was, keep it together, David. David, keep it together slowly. Don't get nervous.
Oh my God! Now, let me get the picture. Is it like it was the last time? You're in the backyard. You're sitting down. You've got a clippers and you've got a mirror.
Yeah, it's the image of like paws outside the trailer. I just have shorts on, no shoes, no shirt, just sitting on a stump
Oh my God.
with a little like $5 Target mirror and the thing on an extension cord going brat.
Now this mirror, when the guy sold you the mirror.
Now this mirror, I see where this joke is going.
When the guy sold you the mirror, when he walked up to the front gate, did his shoes go honk, honk, honk? That's the first question I've got. Did he have an Edwardian frill collar that went all the way around his neck, 180 degrees?
An Edwardian frill collar.
Did he have a 2-syllable name like Sheppo, Buppo, Wizzo, Bizzo? Did he have a 2-syllable O name? Is what I'm saying.
Did his name start with Mr. Honko?
When he got out of the car, did 64 of his friends come out after him? That's what I want to know.
All right.
About this mirror salesman.
Oh my God, Brad.
Oh my goodness.
The lack of skill that I have. I mean, listen, we've got another couple months of this, so we'll get another haircut in. And as God is my witness, I am going to do better on the third haircut. I know what I did wrong.
It's going to be a good 6 months before you're going to need another haircut.
The hell with you. Also, I got to tell you, in a slightly terrifying moment, like this hair is so short for everybody home and so cue ballish.
Yeah.
Brad, there's a little bit of hair loss at the top here.
No.
It's so close that I can see it now in a way that I haven't before. Oh, Brad, I'm not happy about that development.
Oh. Well, at least you don't have any like embarrassing birthmarks or that you were hitherto unaware of.
Well,
like weird bumps or.
I am sad that I got that tattoo of Mr. Honko up there when he sold me the mirror.
When he sold you the mirror.
And on that note, I am going to say hello, everybody, and welcome to ComicLab, the show about making comics.
And making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, editor of webcomics.com and creator of Evil Inc.
And I'm his friend Dave Kellett, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So Dave! Oh, wait a minute. We've got a news flash, Dave.
Oh, yeah, we do. We do have a news flash, Brad. Brad, news coming out this week. I am a 3-time Eisner loser as of this week.
Well, listen, speaking as a 1-time Eisner loser, I'm actually jealous of you because
of my 3-time loss.
Yeah, no, I would have.
I'm 3 times the loser, Brad, that you are. That's what we're saying here.
I would have loved to have been nominated 3 times. You realize what that says about all kidding aside? You know what that says about the quality of your work that you were nominated 3 times? That's amazing.
It says that I can give myself a good haircut. That's what it says.
No, well, the monitor says otherwise.
I'm looking away from the screen. I'm not gonna take this judgment from you on my beautiful haircut. It is always. Hope always springs eternal, and every time I get nominated for an Eisner, I'm like, oh, this is the time. Surely this will be the time that I get to carry home that tiny soccer trophy. And because just a reminder to everyone, the Eisner Award is like 3 inches tall and looks like a soccer trophy. But I did not get it, and I a little bit think, Brad, and this is not fatalist. It's just the nature of the industry. Mm-hmm. I don't think any of us, and by us I mean broadly the people that work in webcomics, will ever really get, aside from the online categories, will ever really get Eisners. I just don't know that unless comic book shops go away and the comic book industry changes so dramatically.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a big change because I think almost all comics are going to be web comics very, very soon.
I know I don't think it's far in the future.
Yeah.
I mean, when we were talking at the beginning of this pandemic about like, oh God, the survivability rate of comic book shops, if we go well into spring of 2021 before comic book shops can get back to shape, there's no way that those shops would have survived a year on their current savings and cash flow and on all that sort of stuff. So I don't know that the comic industry as we know it coming out of this pandemic is going to be the same. So I think that will change things like the Eisners in the years. Like you said, I think a lot of people will be basically some form of electronic comic at that point,
right. And some of them will have publisher dollars behind them and so forth. But I also think that the web tends to be a little bit of an equalizer. And I do think you're going to see more independent creators taking a greater percentage of the Eisners as time wears on. Because I also think that publishers like Marvel and DC are going to put less and less dollars behind those outreaches and put more and more dollars behind things like movie and TV. It's going to have a smaller and smaller importance to them, especially once it goes online. I think you're going to see a big shift, and as near in the future as like 5 to 10 years down the road.
Yeah, and my dime store prediction is for kids and young adults. Parents, I honestly believe this. Most parents will always want their kids to be reading a paper book.
Yeah.
And the reason being, the temptation for a kid who has an iPad in his hand to go, just 5 minutes of Minecraft and then back to the book, that kind of thing. And so parents also, there's something tactical and wonderful about flipping a page that parents, so like Raina's books, Kazu's books, those will always be in print. And I think if DC and Marvel are smart, they will switch to kind of a Shonen Jump, kind of a phone book system.
Yeah.
God, if I had any money to put into comics, that's what I would do, and get that into supermarkets again.
Yes.
Get it back into 7-Elevens and that kind of stuff.
Just all of DC Comics, boom, in a phone book, like once a month.
Yeah.
Oh my God, would that be amazing?
I would be honest, Brad, that I, as an adult who have not bought a comic book, a floppy, in probably 20 years, I'd be like a little tempted by that. I'd be like, I might subscribe to that.
More than a little.
Yeah. But it is interesting to think of where that's going to go. I don't know how we fell into this topic, but anyway, the Eisners.
Because nobody wants to talk about losing the Eisner. It's much better to change topics. But did you see the who won? It wasn't the other Dave. It wasn't Dave Melke. It was some dad daycare thing.
Yes, no, it was a translated manga book, which I bought and I haven't yet read, so I feel bad. I don't want to talk about it, yay or nay. I'm sure it is delightful. The very fact that it made it that it jumped markets means it's probably a great book. But I will read it. But I chose, Brad, to graft citrus while the awards were going on. As God is my witness, I'm going to figure out how to graft citrus.
Wow, you're back to that, huh?
Yeah, no, I know. But Beth very kindly texted me about 10 minutes into the award ceremony going, hey, they just dropped a pre-recorded YouTube video up. It's not live. So I just scanned ahead, and you didn't win. That kind of thing.
It was pre-recorded, so it was just like Phil Lamar reading off, this guy won for this thing, this guy won for that thing, this person won. It was just reading a list?
As far as I know, yeah. It was just pre-recorded. But I'll be honest, I don't regret not having to go sit through a 4-hour Eisner ceremony to find out that I lost, so that's good.
No kidding.
I'm trying to find the silver linings in this, Brad.
The silver lining, all kidding aside, and I love needling you as much as the next person. The silver lining is you were nominated 3 times. That's fucking amazing. That's something to be proud of. You don't get to be upset about that.
Oh no, listen. All kidding aside, we have talked about this before, but I'm not being facetious when I say this. The real award for you and I is that we get to keep doing this year after year.
Right.
And if I let myself think that awards are important, that I've lost, because to me, the joy of getting to wake up and go, what do I want to write about today? Okay, I'm going to write about that. And there's no publisher, there's no editor, there's no marketing team telling me to change this or that. I get to write what I want. People seem to like it. My God, how is that not a win? That's an amazing win, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, I do feel honored and I do feel happy that the nomination was for the Eisner, because that was a beautiful book, Anatomy of Authors. It really was beautiful. And anyway, so this was also a big weekend, Brad, because we had StudioCon this weekend.
Ooh, yes, let's talk about that. That was an interesting experiment. We basically wanted to play with the idea of doing a virtual comic convention. The structure was simple. If you bought a book from one of our stores, we sent you a Zoom invite to a exclusive Zoom meetup where you could talk to us and watch us literally because each of us had 2 cameras, one on our face and one on the desk. You could watch us while we sketched in your book.
That's right. And I had a third camera set up on my dog so that anyone...
Ollie cam.
That it was an Ollie cam. And so you got me, you got my sketch, and you got my dog.
Yeah.
And we had folks coming in from all over the world. The farthest ones that I had were Switzerland, Germany, and Australia, which was fun.
Yeah.
And overall, I thought technically it's interesting to see that it works.
Yes.
Because going into it, Brad and I were like, well, roll the dice. Let's see if this works. And it's fun because, in a world where we're not going to have comics conventions until, I would imagine, and I think I'm speaking pretty safely here, until at least summer of 2021. Mm-hmm. In a world where we don't have conventions until then, I don't know that it's not worth experimenting. Like, why not try things out, share what we know with each other, and see what can work? Because people that read comics are also hungry for Comic-Con, and we're hungry both to, like for me, Brad, I know we've talked about this before, but I get a genuine charge out of that 5 days of Comic-Con, and because I'm a extroverted introvert, and so those 5 days where I allow myself to be an extrovert, I get a real charge out of it,
Yeah.
And so I missed it. I do miss Comic-Con, so this was a fun way to try to get that contact with people.
Right.
And I'm not talking too much. What were your thoughts, Brad, about StudioCon?
Well, listen, this was an experiment that we tried out. It definitely worked better for you than it worked for me. You had a lot of people show up. I didn't have quite as many on my side. But at the same time, I don't want to kind of rain on anyone's parade in that my opinions of virtual conventions turned out to be very similar to how I look at in-person comic conventions. It's something that you should try. You should experiment with it. You should take a look at the return on investment. Did you make enough money after you subtracted your costs? And by the way, this is a much better experiment. If you were in a situation that you're like, okay, maybe I'm going to do an in-person convention or a virtual con, I'd say try a virtual con first because there are so many fewer costs. You don't have hotel, you don't have travel, you don't have shipping your books and your merchandise. But so in that regard, I would definitely say try a virtual con first. My overall view of that is take exactly the same advice that we give you on actual comic conventions. Give it a try, see if it works. If it works, Dave, I think you're going to do this again in November, correct?
Yeah, and I can talk about this publicly because why not hash it out publicly? Brad, what I was thinking was I would do something like call it GiftCon or something.
Yeah.
And do it in mid to late November saying like, look, the explicit purpose of this virtual convention is for you to buy a sketched in book for someone as a gift, right? Mm-hmm. Or sketched on print or whatever it was. Because I think this worked for me. And I think using it in a gift context will get people that already have, like I had a lot of people tweet me, like, oh, I already have all the Sheldon and Drive books and you're not bringing out a new one, so I don't think I'll swing by StudioCon. But for GiftCon, obviously that gets both people that want to gift it to themselves, because why not? Mm-hmm. And you get the give it to someone else crowd. So I think I'm going to try it again in mid to late November.
I like that idea an awful lot because it also plants the idea that this would make a good gift. In other words, you find yourself in the holiday gift giving season where you think, oh, I've got to get a gift for this person or that person, and what am I going to get them? All of a sudden, Dave shows up in your feed saying, hey, this Sheldon might make a good gift. This Anatomy of Authors might make a good gift. You're planting that idea, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah, it's pretty fun to be able to say, look, you could gift a 3-time Eisner loser. What a great, still on it. There's a tiny part of me, Brad, still hurt. Listen, I'm human, but no. But yeah, I think GiftCon will work for me, and we're going to talk about this. I want everybody to know that if you are supporting the show via Patreon over at patreon.com/ComicLab, every week we do a second podcast called ProTips.
Right.
And this week's ProTips, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down for everybody how to do a StudioCon, the technology involved, the costs involved, which are minimal, and how to do it, how to structure it, the times involved, how to do outreach for it, all that sort of stuff. Basically, what Brad and I learned and what we didn't learn from it. What we didn't learn from that. Here's what we didn't learn. I didn't learn no lessons. Anyway, so we're going to have that as a special feature for this week's Pro Tips. So over at patreon.com/ComicLab. So if you want to do it, if you're thinking about it, maybe join us over at Patreon because we're going to do a whole dedicated Pro Tips episode just to StudioCon. Absolutely. But for this show, for me, Brad, one of the big takeaways was it does not and cannot and will not replace a full convention income. I did 1 hour sessions of StudioCon over the 5 days of the quote unquote show, and it equaled about 1 day of San Diego Comic-Con. Probably not. I was
wondering. So it came out to be about the same as 1 day.
Yeah, and so the hourly rate, the per hour earnings at San Diego Comic-Con are the equivalent of the per hour earnings, if that makes sense, at StudioCon. But obviously, I'm not there for 5 full days, and because it just doesn't work, and you just don't have the overall volume over however many hundreds of hours that is. 5 days. What is the show? 10? Is the show 10 hours long each day? So I guess 50
you'd
hours.
have to do a lot of StudioCon to make one Comic-Con.
Yeah, exactly. So we did something like 7 or 8 hours of StudioCon, and Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con, I think is 50 plus hours.
Yeah.
So yeah, I still wish that there was a San Diego Comic-Con. Missed that income, but anyway, as far as a small replacement that is also emotionally satisfying, for me, StudioCon was fun. So and I thank everybody that came by. A lot of ComicLab listeners, Brad.
Yes.
From all over the world, and that was really satisfying. Brad got to meet. And I got to meet a lot of you, and gosh, that was nice. We really appreciate the kind words, especially face-to-face like that. It is lovely.
Right. Yeah, that was cool meeting. And again, like you said, meeting people from all over the world as they were coming in. So that was really kind of nice.
And Brad, it's one of those things where more than a few people said, hey, I'm not a cartoonist, or hey, I work in marketing, or hey, I'm an engineer, but I use your stuff from your show in my business. And I was like, that's fantastic. God, that's really... That made me really happy.
That blew my mind to hear people and such wildly divergent paths. They're like, oh yeah, we get lots of stuff from this show that we can use in our everyday life. That blew my mind.
Yeah, there was one guy who's like, I'm a government contractor. I work out of Virginia. And whenever somebody says that, I'm like, you work for the CIA. Just say it.
Yeah, contractor.
Just say it. You're a government contractor. You live in Virginia. Just say you're the CIA. And he's like, I use some of your stuff for pitching certain ideas to the company. I was like, oh, that's great. That's really great.
Yeah.
But Brad, we had a question we wanted to jump into for this week, a $5 question, and I'm going to read it to us now. Here it goes. This comes in from Lark, who writes, hey, Dad and Brave, I've got another nuts and bolts question for you. Ellipses. In comics, they're often used in character dialogue to indicate slow or faltering speech, a pregnant pause, a trailing thought, or even that a character has been rendered speechless or nonplussed, as Brad would say. However, I sometimes catch myself overusing them in my own comics. Do you have any quick tips for proper usage and avoiding pitfalls of this versatile piece of punctuation? Thanks as always, Lark. That is a great question, Brad.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Okay, so let's talk about ellipses. First of all, if you're going to use an ellipsis...
Can I make one quick suggestion?
Yeah.
Because not everyone remembers this. Ellipses are the ... right?
Right, the 3 periods.
The 3 full stops in a row. Exactly, yeah. Keep going.
Now, there's a lot of different ways to indicate a pause. An ellipsis is great. First of all, it's ... It's 3 periods. Don't do 4, literally, seriously, don't do 4 periods. Don't do 7 periods.
Definitely don't do 2 periods. That looks weirder than anything.
And 1 period, obviously, is the end of the sentence.
It is funny, though. You're right. I didn't even think about that. Some people think that 7 periods, it's a bigger pause.
It's a big pause. Yeah, that's horrible. And some people you'll see use 4 periods, which just looks awkward and amateurish. It's 3 periods. Bink, bink, bink. The end. Stop it. Move on. Get writing again. But it's one of those things, Dave, that now that I've turned you onto it, you're going to start seeing it, and it's going to just annoy you as much as it annoys me.
It is like when Brad, many years ago, turned me on to the fact that it's not chomping at the bit, it's champing at the bit.
Champing.
And now I can't not see it, literally, Brad, everywhere I go.
Yes.
And I hate you so much for turning me on to the fact that it's champing at the bit, because I've become this cranky old pedantic man on a street corner going, it's champing at the bit.
It has to do with horses. Learn something. Read a book. Yeah.
I haven't thought about that in forever. Read a book, asshole. Hey, come on.
Yeah, it's a great callback. So listen, it's 3 dots for an ellipsis. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. Number one, if you're using ellipses often, to the extent that you like this question asker, you're starting to think, I'm wondering if I'm using it too often. And even if you just use it once in a while, I want you to think about this. I want you to really consider this. Every time you use an ellipsis, it's your writing is telling you that perhaps you should be separating those into different word balloons.
Oh, interesting thought, Brad. Okay, keep going.
Because what you're indicating is a pause. But nothing works better than a compound word balloon to show a pause to your reader. And then you can even kind of play a little bit of spatial games by making the 2 word balloons close and almost merged into one another, or make them far to indicate a longer pause. Now you can play with time a little bit with your pause. But when you're using an ellipsis, you should be considering a compound word balloon.
Brad, that is a great thought, because you're right. Comics have a unique ability that novellas, novels, short stories, essays don't have. We can physically show the pause, right? We can physically do it, not through some contrivance of English with this invention of 3 dots. We can do it by saying, here is the thought, and then look over at this balloon over here. There is a thought, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Brad, you're brilliant. That is true. Okay, keep going because you're on fire. Keep going.
Here's another
He's
thought.
the girl on fire. Katniss Everdeen, the girl on fire.
Here's another thought. We're talking about pauses, and there are many different types of pauses. And if you're only limiting yourself to an ellipsis, you're not using the full vocabulary of typography in general. For example, take this sentence. What do I look like? The Queen? There's a pause in there. A comma doesn't do it. An ellipsis is completely wrong. What you need for that is a long dash. That means a short pause with another phrase coming right in on top of it. What do I look like? The Queen? That's not a pause. That's like a half a step. That's a long dash pause. And if you punctuate it with an ellipsis or a comma, it's not going to read anywhere near correctly to your reader.
So what's funny about dashes is I have almost like Vietnam War flashbacks about dashes, because I worked with a proofreader at the magazine I worked with one time who, oh my God, he knew the minutia of dashes like no other English writer I've ever encountered.
Yeah.
He's like, oh no, for that you want a dash. Oh, for that you want an N dash. Oh, for that one you want an M dash. And I was like, what? This is nonsense. It's such minutia, an N dash versus an M dash. Could you explain to people in typesetting what an M dash is versus an N dash?
An N dash is the width of the letter N, and an M dash is the width of the letter M.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's why they call it N dashes and M dashes.
Holy crap, I did not know that's how. Oh my God, Brad, 20 years later, I wish you could time travel back and tell me that when I worked at the magazine. Yeah, holy crap, it's the width of the letter.
Yeah, and by the way, it's not a hyphen. A hyphen is completely different. It's very short.
Yeah, a hyphen, if I'm right, is considered a dash in typesetting, right?
I'm not sure. I think a hyphen is considered a hyphen in typesetting.
Well, yeah, okay, I'm not going to argue. But anyway, long story short, if you really want to drill down in dashes, there's whole specific uses for whole specific dashes.
Yeah.
But in comics, that's obviously not going to be as critical, because there's a percentage of us that's going to be hand lettering, so that doesn't matter.
Right.
And the ones that are using typesetting, you can manipulate the type in Illustrator or Photoshop in a way that makes that irrelevant anyway. You know what I mean, Brad?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just in general, though, I'll be honest with you. When I'm punctuating my sentences, I'm using either an ellipsis or an M dash, or what I call a long dash. Just because, let's face it, the difference between an N dash and an M dash are very, very minuscule. So I go for the longer one because I want to make a big impact visually,
especially in comics,
on the reader. Yeah, but
I like how you said I just paused for a second. You said or an M dash, or what I like to call the long dash, and it made me laugh to think like, so I would use an M dash, or what I like to call a Steven, just something like you would name it.
Yeah, I've given all the letters on my keyboard their own individual names that have nothing to do with the letters themselves.
So then you're going to want to type in a Ricardo, and then a Suzette, and then...
Oh, you mean an R and an S? No, not at all. I mean the M dash and a period. Ricardo and Susan. Come on, get this right. So basically, and by the way, don't overlook the importance of a well-placed comma as well. But if you find yourself using ellipses over and over again, it's a good indication that you probably should be breaking those word balloons up. Remember, nobody likes a big word balloon. Nobody likes a word balloon with 2 paragraphs, or frankly, I'm getting to the point, 2 sentences of content in it. I want those word balloons to be short and punchy. And if I've got pauses, you better believe my first, even if I've got somebody saying thanks, but I have another question. Those are 2 word balloons. It's not an ellipsis. Yeah. It's not a comma. I want a pause in there. The further I go on my own aesthetic journey, the more I almost default to compound word balloons.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here because for the most part, you have captured a better thought than I would have suggested, which is to break up the thought into 2 separate word balloons, which I think is genius. Mm-hmm. I will say this. My own journey in comics writing has been the slow dawning realization that to minimize word count is the goal, is so often the goal, right?
Yes.
And part of it is to minimize run-on sentences and run-on thoughts. Mm-hmm. And here is the weird philosophy you have to think about when you're writing for comics. These people are speaking, but we are capturing spoken word in a written sentence. Yes. And what I mean by that, why that's important is, if you've ever read a transcribed interview, the flow of language is markedly different than how you would ever write a sentence, right? Like, for example, look at one of, say, Trump's transcribed speeches, right? It's just a word salad of meandering thoughts. Yeah. And no one would write a sentence like that, right? No one would lay out. And so we're walking an interesting line here as writers in that we are writing spoken dialogue, which is often meandering, often has dangling participles and all sorts of weird things on it because no one ever completes a thought, right? And we jump on to thoughts to add on one more emphasis like I just did right there. Mm-hmm. And so if you transcribe this, it would look like weird word salad, you know?
Yeah.
So here's the thing you've got to do is that knowing that you want to minimize your word count in comics and knowing that you want to have clarity of thought and expression, just keep in mind that you're trying to remove the artificiality that written words often have, while at the same time maintaining some semblance of order, which is why Brad is suggesting things like separating out word balloons for different thoughts or using a dash, things that never would appear in spoken text, but that we have to use to maintain some semblance of order, basically, you know?
Yep, absolutely.
Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we're going to tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
When you do, you're going to get hours and hours of podcasts that we recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on ComicLab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, which is a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, we get it. No worries.
Yeah, listen, you can still support the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.
Just leave a 5-star review and a few kind words.
That, along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics. Oh, geez, Brad, I just looked at myself in the monitor again because my haircut.
Dave, I got to go ahead. Dave, this guy that sold you the mirror, when he handed you the business card, was it just a balloon in the shape of a poodle?
God damn it, you could go all day with these, couldn't you?
I'm just wondering about this mirror salesman.
I was sending you a serious cry for help with this haircut, and you come back with more clown jokes. What a pal. What a buddy. Man, it's moments like this, though, where I just go, oh, boy, thank God I married already. This is great.
Oh, my gosh, yes.
Oh, I locked it down before this haircut. Good job. All right.
It was so funny. Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
Brad, yeah. There's sometimes when I trigger a laugh that's so good that you sound like an asthmatic smoker. That's when I know I've really gotten you. You go like, ha, 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 ha.
Oh God. I feel you because listen, the only reason I'm laughing is that my hair is getting really long and ridiculous looking in the back. I can still keep it with a little bit of product. I can still keep it tame in the front, but in the back it is curling all up. I'm going to have to do this sooner or later. And then it's going to be my comeuppance for making fun now. But I can see it coming up Broad Street.
Brad, let me just get on FaceTime with you when you do it. I'm going to talk you through it like a intervention.
Talk me through it. Yeah,
because the key is don't get cocky and switch to a different blade size because don't walk the Dave Kellett path. Yeah, that way lies madness and a bald head. So don't do that.
I think the key word there is artist hands. I just have to remember. I just have to find some.
Brad, literally, that is the story that I've been telling myself with these damn haircuts. Well, Dave, you got artist hands. You can do
artist
this.
Hands.
Turns out I have artist like very fine finger control. I don't have artist hands.
Yeah, you've also got, what's that called? Artist's hubris.
Yeah, Brad, what I have is artist's fingers, but I have meat packer's hands. That's what I've got.
You've got artist hopes.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, listen, Dave, before we get too far with these artist hands of yours, I want to tell you what I've been using my artist hands for here in the studio, and it's the Wacom One that I've got sitting right here in front of me. And I got to tell you, I'm loving working on this thing.
That's right. And they are the sponsors of this week's show over at Wacom at WACOM.com, the makers of the Wacom One. Both Brad and I have them and have been loving them in quarantine. They have been basically saving our bacon.
Yeah.
Although now when I use American phrases like saving bacon, Brad, I'm afraid that I'm using it wrong now that I didn't know loaded for bear. So I'm going to assume that saving my bacon is okay.
Yes, saving bacon is good.
Okay. So the Wacom One has been saving our bacon. And so we are particularly proud and thankful that they are jumping in as sponsors of this week's show and through many months to come. So thank you, Wacom, over at WACOM.com, the makers of the new Wacom One. And Bradley, before we jump into the next $5 question from patreon.com/ComicLab, I had a question for you, which we have not done in a while. Mm-hmm. And this is a thought in light of the pandemic that I had about art. And this might not lead anywhere. This is more of a philosophical question about art and the arc of art's life. But here it is. Okay, so you remember the famous fire at Alexandria,
yes,
where we lost a vast number of original works from the classical eras, right? So my thought was this. The art that survived that fire and that has survived falls in either, empires that have fallen in China or across Europe or South America, the art that lasted had a viral nature to it when it was alive. And what that did is it allowed the art to spread as far as it could, like a virus, so that if multiple copies of the art die off, one will survive. Right. So if there's like an Aristophanes play that didn't survive, it didn't go viral enough, basically, in the life of that piece of art. That play didn't go viral enough and didn't get copied by enough people so that when a fire came along or when a plague came along or something came along that would destroy where art was being held, it didn't survive. So this is a broader philosophical question, and it doesn't really go anywhere, but it's a fun thought. Does great art need to go viral to survive?
Wow. And okay, so the place my head immediately goes to, and if so, what does it take to go viral? And answering the second question first, it takes a combination of quality and technology. In other words, if for that play to go viral, first, it's got to be a good play. It's got to be a play that somebody wants to copy. It has a reason to be copied. You know what I mean? And that's a quality issue. And then the second part of that is technology. Is it easy or easier? Are you capable of making a copy of that play? Is that something that's attainable?
Right.
So really, that comes down to quality plus technology. Assuming those things are in place, what does that mean for art being created today, Dave?
It is a fun and interesting question to stew over, because the Mona Lisa, you could say, oh, well, we could lose the Mona Lisa in a fire at the Louvre, right? But we will never lose the Mona Lisa, Brad, now. That painting at a high resolution has been so copied in databases and books and prints all over the world that thousands of copies will survive this century, and a few hundred copies will survive into multiple centuries in the future. Even if she were to burn today, then that painting would still live on. But it's interesting too that if a piece of work doesn't go viral quick enough, in terms of your question about technology, like we have Shakespeare's Love's Labour's Lost, right? That play we have, and it's been copied all over the world, and we will never lose Love's Labour's Lost.
Right.
But we've already lost Love's Labour's Won, because no one copied that one down in the right way. So that's a Shakespeare play that we're never going to get back, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It didn't go viral quick enough, basically, as art. And it's an interesting way to look at your own career as a cartoonist, in that, like, we will never lose Peanuts. Right. Peanuts and Calvin and Hobbes were copied to the nth degree. They will survive in the centuries to come. I don't know that my work will survive. Listen, I've come to peace with that a long time ago. It's not a big deal.
That happens after 3 times losing the Eisner. I understand that.
God damn it! Oh, my baby heart, Brad. Why are you doing this to me?
I'm sorry. You set it up so cleanly. I couldn't not do it.
I appreciate, as a humorist, taking the shot. That like the momentary ego moment where you're like, oh, dang it, he got me. But then as a humorist, you go, that was well played, perfectly done.
No, but I think let's take that back a second. I think that it would be hard to erase Sheldon, in that it has been disseminated so much. There's been so many. Even you've got the website. Now you've got a certain archiveness on Twitter and Facebook, and you've got the Wayback Machine, and that's just electronic. Now you've got the number of books that you put into the world. You could make it hard to find Sheldon, but could you erase it completely? That remains to be seen, especially as we go forward with internet media. What happens to Twitter and Facebook along the way? Technically, you could still find something that you posted on what was before Facebook, not YouTube.
MySpace.
Technically, you could still find stuff that you had posted on LiveJournal and MySpace. So is that can you be erased? You've put 20 years of work and counting into the world. I think it would be tough to completely erase you. If I'm being fair, I think it'd be tough to do.
Well, I think our work, the fact that it exists in both print and digital, that's helps the viral nature and the survivability of it, right?
Yeah.
But if we're honest about it, the servers that we live on, those are not going to last 20, 30 years, right? I mean, the Wayback Machine will survive. Someone will keep that going.
Yeah.
In fact, I could see foundation or government money jumping in to keep that going for a long time. But and the books, the physical books, some copies will survive somewhere.
Right.
But think of like Flickr. That went down, and so much of that was just like poof, gone from the universe,
completely gone. And that would be hurtful if that's the only place you'd put your stuff. But there's Sheldon in so many different places, digitally and print, that again, and yes, you don't have the level of security in terms of that sort of thing that somebody whose work is preserved in, let's say, the Library of Congress. I know we've got web cartoonists whose work is preserved in the Library of Congress. That's another degree of, but then I don't know that we're talking about viral nature quite so much as we're talking about the archival nature,
the survivability of archives. Yeah. But it's a fun little mind game to play, is that for art to truly last, it has to become virus-like and really spread, because it has to be able to survive. If 99 copies of it die off, it has to be able to survive in one location, in one form. And so truly lasting art has to go viral at just the right time and to your point, with just the right technologies, such that it doesn't get lost to the sands of time.
Right. And also the fact that, like you said, Love's Labor's lost and Love's Labor's won. Just because one of Shakespeare's plays was lost does not leave Shakespeare's work diminished. In that regard, you are very virus-like in that you have many, 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 many of these little bugs out. You could take one Sheldon that you created in June of 2005. That one might be completely lost. But does that mean that you're lost as a cartoonist? No, there's a whole bunch of other Sheldons that point to Dave Kellett was here and did a thing that people enjoyed.
Yeah. And have you ever had this little mental game too, where someone 100 years from now in an archive or going through it stumbles upon Brad Geiger's work and goes, hot damn, oh, I like this. Oh, this is really good stuff.
Yeah.
And then somehow you have a second awakening again 100 years from now, long after you're dead. Have you ever had that mental game?
No, I'm still trying to do the mental game where somebody looks at it today and says, I'd like that to happen once. You can have your 100 years from now. I would like to have it happen once.
Well, God damn it, you caught me off guard. I suppose, though, that if I'm being fair about it, my waking fantasy of like someone finding something 100 years from now and going, oh boy, this Dave Kellett sure was good, is a version. It's a version of the I'm huge in Japan scenario.
Yes.
Like I want to have been successful through time, even if I can't be successful through space. So like 100 years from now, someone will be like, because I think about like some Russian composers that from like 1880 that are being basically having a second wave of like, oh, these. I'm thinking about one guy in particular, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Where their work was essentially lost to most popular culture for 100, 120 years, and now they're having a second awakening, right?
Yeah.
Their work is. And it's interesting that part of what we do to get the work viral is so that there could be sort of a second life for that art down the road,
Yeah, which is a fun thought. It's like you said, it's like being world famous in Poland, that old Mel Brooks joke, right? He's world famous in Poland.
Oh my God, that's a better construction than famous in Japan. World famous in Poland.
Yeah.
Who is that? That was Mel Brooks?
That was Mel Brooks. I'm blanking, but yeah, it was a Mel Brooks line. He's world famous. It was when they were a theater troupe trying to hide and get out of Germany. It was a very, very good, underlooked Mel Brooks movie. But yeah, it's kind of fun to wonder how people are going to take a look at this thing that we're doing now, 100 years later, and the perspective with which they're going to apply to it. You wonder whether it's going to hold up or whether it's going to be one of those things that just gets even better, like a fine wine. It's something that's fun to think about.
Yeah. I will say this, as someone who, I so rarely talk about the stuff that I did in grad school, but one of the things that I did was I had to archive a bunch of, catalog and archive a bunch of stuff from between the interregnum period between World War I and World War II. Mm-hmm. And so many of those comics, Brad, they don't make a lick of sense anymore.
Yeah.
Not a lick of sense. I can't tell you how many comics I came across of, I guess this used to be a thing. There was a lot of coal around a house in England because you would heat your house with coal, right? Which, by the way, how stinky was your house? But you would heat your house with coal. But apparently, something about the mineral contents of coal, babies used to grab pieces of coal and put it right in their mouth, and they would like chew on coal, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, my modern sensibilities, I was like, who the hell's giving their baby coal? What the hell?
Keep that baby away from the coal, you dummy.
You jackasses. But it's funny how, like, now none of that makes sense because it's so of the time,
Right.
So I know for a fact that 70, 80% of Sheldons won't make a damn lick of sense 100 years from now.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be like, wait, what is this with an iPhone? Who? What?
Yeah.
What is that? What is this swipe right stuff?
What's a Vulcan and why are they an interior decorator? I don't understand.
Exactly. But anyway, so I had no real point to this. It's just a fun philosophical little journey of like, to really truly survive the centuries, art has to go viral at some point and mutate into many different forms so that if many die off, one form will still survive. And thank you for walking that journey with me, because it was just, again, not any topic that adds value to any of our careers, but it's fun to think about the sort of survivability of art.
No, and yes, and I think you are very viral. For the record, I think you're plenty viral.
Well, I can make a joke about that, but I won't.
But listen, Dave, we've got another $5 question that I want to bounce off of you. Are you ready for this one?
Let's do it, my friend.
This one comes in from Christopher Murrin, and Christopher says, have you ever explored selling your themed comic collections to or through non-bookstore retail outlets? For example, getting Fables into a Philadelphia souvenir shop, or the Pugs collections into pet stores. Dave Kellett, I ask you, themed collections in non-bookstore retail outlets, what do you think?
So, Christopher, I have pursued this, actually. Not to any great success, but I will tell you what I did. So when I had my Pugs book come out, and the first one, by the way, there's now been 3, but there's now been 3 because hot damn, those things sell like hotcakes, and I'm no dummy. I don't hate money. So the first book, the first orange Pug book, sold through 3 different print runs, I think, right? Mm-hmm. And somewhere around the second print run, I was like, I'm leaving money on the table. I've got to get this into to pet stores. And so I looked at doing 2 things, Christopher. I looked at going to pug meetups where it's like 1,000 pugs in a park. I don't know if you've heard about these kind of things where the breed Brad will get together and like, hey, it's Dachshund Day, or hey, everybody, it's Labradoodle Day, and all the Labradoodles are getting together and we're going to have a little fair contest.
Oh, that sounds delightful.
Yeah, for people that enjoy pets, Brad, it's something fun that they do.
Yeah, it sounds like it's something to do. Yeah. God. Oh man! Could
the
you
level
imagine
of joy, the Venn diagram of Brad and pets is like 14 feet apart. Anyway, so Christopher, I looked into doing those, and then for whatever reason, I was like, I just hesitated and I didn't do it. I was like, you know what? I basically forecast a truth onto it that didn't naturally exist, which was I'm going to get there, I'm going to set up my little table, and I'm going to feel like a loser off to the side where all the pugs are running around.
Yeah.
And so I didn't do it, but I did spend more time looking into how to get it into the supply chain of Petco, and what was the other one? PetSmart, right?
PetSmart, sure.
And it is an entirely different, Brad, distribution system than book systems. And it would have required, like, I can't sell to individual chains. You have to get into their system in a way that most people understand. Like, they don't empower the local chains to just buy shit. It has to go through a corporate approval process. And the corporation only buys from certain set distributors, and the set distributors have to go through a vetting process with individual vendors. And frankly, it got to be so much work that I eventually just was like, I'd rather be a cartoonist than try to figure out the distribution system of Petco, you know? Like, I didn't get, basically, the crude answer is I didn't give enough of a shit to do all that. I would rather just be a cartoonist. So I gave up on it. But now I'm curious with you, Brad, with Fables, that was a specifically Philadelphia-focused book that you did that got Eisner nominated. Am I right?
It was Eisner nominated and an Eisner loser.
So, Brad,
for the record.
So, Brad, when the clown sent you the mirror about that book, did okay, I don't have a clown joke ready for you.
Dave,
I'm sorry about that.
Dave, when the clown
oh God
came
damn
over,
it! Here we go.
Dave,
what's the joke?
When the guy came over to deliver the mirror, did a little monkey dance up and hand you the receipt? Did he little tin cup on his hat? Did he do a little dance?
He did, okay. And then he laughed at my haircut. Yes.
Okay, so I did, to answer your question, Dave, I actually did look into getting Fables into Philadelphia souvenir shops and came upon very much a similar experience that you had. In other words, it was a really low return on investment, really low ROI for me. I basically went as far as to sending it out to some souvenir shops. Again, got a lot of return, especially from the shops that I had gone out to. A lot of, we could take that on consignment. And of course, if you're familiar with consignment, that means I bring them a bunch of my books. I get paid when they sell the books. And of course, that means I've got to check in every month or 2 months to come up and say, hey, did you sell any of my books? No, we didn't sell any of your books. So, okay, goodbye. Consignment, except on a really large scale. Amazon does a lot with consignment. That consignment I'll do. Consignment at a comic shop or a souvenir shop, nah, not so much. You're going to put so much work into it, it's going to kill your ROI. So, and again, much like Dave, trying to figure out how to get into those distribution channels, it very quickly became a situation where it just wasn't a big, prospect for me. Although, as I'm sitting here talking, I don't think I've ever told you the story. I was flying out for some convention somewhere. I ended up sitting next to a buyer or the buyer for Urban Outfitters. And we struck up a conversation, and she's getting way interested into the comics that I do. And I think I must have had a Courting Disaster with me. This was when Courting Disaster was appearing in newspapers. She wanted to put Courting Disaster books up at the cash register of Urban Outfitters. And I'm like, sure, go ahead, knock yourself out. Gave her a book. Long story short, obviously, is that it never went any further because, like Dave was saying earlier, you've got to go through such a corporate structure jungle to get anything done. It never came anywhere. But for a minute there, I was this close to being in Urban Outfitter.
Oh, you know what, too? I just had a memory, Brad. I totally forgot about this. First of all, Christopher, your question is warranted because, as you can hear, Brad and I both tried this, right? And part of being an independent operator is always, as we say, keeping your head on a swivel and trying stuff like this. And so, even though it didn't work for us, that doesn't mean you shouldn't try it, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't keep it in a potential toolbox of like things that you can try for books down the line. But I will mention another one that I tried, Brad. I forgot about this. My coffee book, Coffee, It's What's for Dinner, was also an Eisner loser. And the success of that book, I was like, you know what? I'm going to see if I can get into Starbucks supply chain.
Yes.
Because at that point, this was when Starbucks was starting to feature like CDs and books at their front counter. Do you remember that period, Brad?
Yes.
And the physical CDs. And so I reached out to like 3 different people at Starbucks. And my God, that was just a labyrinth of corporate approvals to get into Starbucks. Even on the individual chain, you know, the same system. You have to get in on corporate approval level to get into the chain. You can't just go through a chain. And so I abandoned that. But I did spend about a month of emails and meetings trying to get into that system before I said shine it.
Yep.
And another one that I did do, too, and this is worth talking about, and it's unfortunate, but it's a truth we should acknowledge. I have also at times gone to comic book shops like Brad and said, here's 5, here's 4, whatever it is of this title. And the sad truth, and I will say it about one company because they're bankrupt now, so why not just...
why not pile on?
I sold like 10 or 15, not consigned, sold 10 or 15 books to a comic book shop in L.A., a one-time famous shop called Meltdown Comics. Never got a check. They're like, all right, that'll be going out this week. I gave them the invoice, never got a check. And I was like, isn't that interesting that a business that works on such small margins,
right?
I wonder if that was an accident or how intentional that was. And also, interesting that they went bankrupt. I find that there's not a far leap to see what might have happened business-wise.
Especially since they didn't send you any checks.
Yeah, exactly.
But also the thought behind, hey, we've got something that sold. Wouldn't you think that their first instinct would be, hey, we need to build a relationship with this person because they do work that sells at our shop. We need to cultivate that. Nah, they're gonna take you for whatever they made by not writing you that check, and then of course you're not going to do any more business through them. And you know what were they thinking?
Yeah. So. I will say this, Christopher, because I think the route that we were on is the right one, which is keep your head on a swivel, keep this as an option, but know, as Brad and I have found, that the return on investment for either selling to a small individual shop where you sell 3, 4, 5 copies, not a huge return on investment, or trying to get through the labyrinthine hoops, jumping through all the hoops that a corporate approval process takes. We found both processes are not a high return on investment for the volumes we would have sold for through either of those channels. But do keep it in your wheelhouse because, for example, I recently started using Amazon Advantage, which is, to Brad's point, is a form of their consignment system. Not really, but kind of a consignment
system. No, it kind
of
is, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Because they don't pay you until it sells.
That is true. And I have found it to be a pain in the ass as a process, but I can see where the writing on the wall is going in terms of retail in America. And we're going to end up with 3 major retailers, Target, Walmart, and Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And they're largely going to be online 10 years from now, right?
Yep.
So my thought was, and mainly for the advantage of Prime free shipping, I need to get my books into those channels, even if I'm making less.
Yeah.
And so that was my thought there. And that has been worth it for me so far, actually, happily. But for me, the bread and butter is, you like Dave Kellett? You follow Dave Kellett on Twitter, buy from Dave's store. And then the margins are much better. The margins allow me to make a living, and you're getting a personal book from the artist that you like. So that has been the greatest return on investment for me. Brad, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to underline what you said. Keep it to return on investment. In other words, this is something to look at, to consider. But at some point, when you're spinning your wheels like we both ended up doing, you got to know when to cut bait and say, okay, this was a good idea. I'm going to go back to making comics and doing things that actually work, if that's the case. And if you try it and you succeed, write in and tell us your success story, because we want to hear that too.
Yeah, and frankly, if you think on the Discord server, if you can think of strategies that Brad and I have not tried or should have tried, by all means, share it with it, because let's learn from one another and raise that tide. But I like, Brad, that you said you got to cut bait, because I'm learning that for a guy who I could describe as the least outdoorsy dude in the world, you are loaded for bear. You're cutting bait. You're the least outdoorsy guy I've ever met in my life, and yet you know all the idioms for outdoor life.
Yeah, all of my idioms are hunting and fishing idioms. And the one thing that I have done fishing a little bit, but then you got to put the worm on the hook, and
oh my God, Brad, wait. The next time you're out here in California, or frankly, the next time I'm in Pennsylvania, can we please go fishing together? I think it would be so fun to go fishing with you. The level of frustration I think that you would reach would be chef's kiss, and I would love to be there for it.
I'll give you a little example. Here, let's go fishing with Brad. All right, I got the worm on the hook. That took 15 minutes. I'm going to cast.
It does take 15 minutes.
Because you got
Also, Brad, here's fishing with Dave. Here's fishing with Dave. It takes 15 minutes to get that damn worm on the hook. Yeah. And then also, I have also stabbed through my pointer finger with the hook and successfully injected worm juice into my finger through that damn hook.
Worm juice. And then, but because when you first, pick the worm with the hook, it makes that reaction that's just, because
you're literally stabbing the damn thing.
Do you know how hard I tried to just tie the worm in a knot around the hook? That, by the way, that never works. That never works. I even tied a double knot. They always wiggle free. So I cast my line out there, plop, there it is in the water. Okay, here we go. Fuck this, Dave. I got beers back at the cabin. That's fishing with Brad.
Let me take you fishing with Dave Kellett, right?
Yeah,
all right, Brad, I'm getting my worm on the hook. Oh God, it's taking a long time. Ow! All right, worm juice in my finger. All right, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. All right, I got the worm on. Hooray! All right, time to cast off. And I do a beautiful 50-foot cast. Psh, right? Oh, it's great. Oh, look at that cast. Perfect. But I've successfully launched the worm 300 yards. The cast went 50 feet. The worm went 300 yards out into the water.
The worm is out water skiing.
Yeah. He's still skipping across the lake as I'm like, God damn it, I spent 15 minutes getting that worm on there.
And then like, are you like me? I get hopeful eyes, like my bobber's out there, and then I start talking to the person on the boat. That looks like that bobber's going down. No, that's just the wave. Now it's going down. Nope, just the wave on the water, making the bobber go up and down. It's not going down, though. I think that bobber's going down. The bobber's not going down. I think the bobber's going down. I'm going to pull it in. I'm pulling it in. I got to fish. The bobber's going up and down. I pull it in. The worm's still looking at me. I've got no patience for this.
I know. I'm not built for it. Because I always, it speaks to why you and I don't vacation well, because we're like, I could be doing so many comics right now.
Oh my God. I could be getting stuff done. And again, thank God for the Wacom One. I just bring that on vacation with me. And then when I get tired of poking myself in the finger with a doggone hook, I can go in and get something done.
Well, Brad, let's finish it off with one more question with
sure.
from a patreon.com/ComicLab listener. This comes in from Bob Glasscock and Blob. Sorry, Bob. Bob writes, "Hi, Brad and Dave. Just a quick note to say how much I enjoy the ComicLab podcast." Hey, thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
They always provide helpful tips and solid laughs and good fishing tips, as we've just found. So, I do have one question. Any tips on building or upgrading a comic website? I'm attempting to migrate to Techie on a new hosting site with mixed results. Mm-hmm. Should I hire a pro? My coding skills aren't what they used to be. Thanks, Bob. Brad, this is a question for you, as you have just spent what I can only describe as a long process.
Yeah.
Getting your new site up and running. Should Bob and should people hire a pro to do their new site?
Yes. The short answer is yes. You should do that, and you shouldn't look back for a couple of different reasons. Number one, if you're compiling your taxes, check with your CPA, of course, but in many cases that money will be a business expense and you can deduct it from your earnings. So it's just a smart business expense. Number two, since so much of our publishing is online, and since online publishing has gotten a lot more complicated than it was 15 years ago when you just put a comic up on a WordPress site running Comics Press, if you're going to do this, you should be doing it correctly. And that means making a responsive website that handles mobile traffic differently than it handles desktop traffic. You should be doing an awful lot of things. I'm thrilled that you're thinking about Techie, because that's what I use. And I kind of helped direct some of the things that it performs under. And the person behind it, Brian, is a great person. And if you get in touch with him and say that you'd like to have him do some of this stuff, I know he'll help you out. And he's very reasonably priced from my experience. So whether you're doing Techie or doing something else, you should be thinking about doing this in a professional manner. It makes a bigger and bigger difference as things go down the pike. And if your site isn't doing things like responsive media and things like that, you're really missing the boat. So it'll be the best money you spend all year.
Yeah, I will just underline that by saying yes. I think you should, Bob. I have done the same. In fact, I need to do the same. This has been a recurring theme for me for the last 3-4 years. Going, I gotta hire somebody to do my site.
I know.
At some point, it's going to bite me on the ass. Is the truth of it. I have to get that site redone, and I'm going to have an Eisner vote website kind of problem at some point in the future where things just stop working because they've not been updated. And it's my own not intransigence, but it's just the molasses feeling, don't you think, Brad? Of like, well, it's working right now, so I got an awful big to-do list. We'll leave that be. But
and
yes,
it's also why you don't. It's also like it's working right now. I don't want to touch it because what happens is, and really, I switched over my site midway through the year. I still have a lot of things that I'm finessing and getting into place and playing with. And I still get a note from time to time. I'm running, this XYZ browser on this computer and things aren't happening exactly correctly. You're going to be squashing bugs for the next 6 to 9 months or so.
Yes.
And it's frustrating and it's upsetting and it's not what you want to deal with, but you've got to do it, right?
Yeah. No, you're right. So yes, the short answer, Bob, is yes, you got to do it. You should hire a pro. Mm-hmm. And also to Brad's point, you should expect that it's going to take a chunk of your time for the next 6 to 9 months, even after it's launched. And
so I will give a strong endorsement to Techie, TOOCHEKE. It does everything that I think a web publishing system should be doing for web comics. And I've really kind of gotten the fire lit under me to even push this whole idea further, just now that I see everything that he's putting into it since we started this process.
Gotcha. Good. Yeah. Well, that's good. That's a ringing endorsement from Brad on that one.
Absolutely. And that means you've been listening to ComicLab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my fully haired friend, Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc. at evil-comic.com.
And my cute as a cue ball friend, Dave Kellett, co-director of Stripped, but still cute as a button, cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com, and Drive at drivecomic.com.
And the ComicLab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net. And this episode was edited by Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media. And of course, this week's episode was sponsored by the good folks at Wacom over at wacom.com. Wacom.com, the makers of the new Wacom One.
If you love ComicLab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode.
And ComicLab is made possible by your support on patreon.com/ComicLab. So we'll go ahead and say that twice. Patreon.com/ComicLab.
So, Dave, this mirror salesman. When
you're not even going to follow it up. It's just the mirror salesman.
This mirror salesman, he delivers the mirror. You look in the mirror. Is your head small and your waist really wide?
God. This is what you were built for as a humorist. You were built for moments like this of just like, I've got 14 more iterations of this joke. Dave, this mirror salesman, did he happen to have a flower lapel, and when you got close to it, did it squirt you in the face? Dave, this mirror salesman, did he happen to have pants on that were 15 sizes too large for him?
Did they keep falling down, and then he pulled them up with his suspenders? Were there cream pies just happen to be hanging around the house just within reach?
Dave, this mirror salesman, when he walked around, did he happen to walk with his elbows really high up at eye level?
Dave, the mirror salesman, when he showed up, when he wanted to let you know he was out front, he honked his horn. Did it sound like this? Boop, 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 boop.
I'm laughing at that not because that was funny, but because this is what your horn sounded like.
Oh, I started too high and I couldn't. I got to go into the lower registers.
Back to the vocal coach.